You've got questions, I've got answers. Welcome back to Body Beyond the Scales, the podcast that gets you stronger and more confident in your body through building better habits. Today, I'm going to be answering all of your questions in this week's Q&A episode, getting into the dirty deets of the stuff that you've been messaging me, asking on my stories and stuff. So, hopefully this is useful for you. So we're going to be starting off by talking about tracking calories, portion sizes, and where to start. So someone had asked a question along the lines of basically they're starting to track calories, but they're not really sure where to start. So I kind of wanted to highlight a few things to kind of think about when you're getting started with tracking calories. So the first thing is what to use. Well, I like MyFitnessPal as an option, but they do charge now, I think, for the barcode scanner. I think if you had an old account, you can use it without paying, but I think most accounts you have to pay for now. For some reason, I still have the barcode scanner on mine. Nobody's telling MyFitnessPal. If you can access that, that's a super useful app. I've also used Fitbit. Now, they're the two that I've used. On my coaching app, I've used the one that's on there as well. But unless you work with me, you can't use that. I've also heard very good things from NutriCheck. A lot of people really like the detail that gives in the kind of the layout. So a few different options there of apps that you can use for tracking when it comes to where to do it. The next thing is what to track. Well, you basically want to track every single thing that you eat or drink. If it goes in your mouth, get your mind out of the gutter. If it goes in your mouth, then you want to make sure that you're tracking it. And you want to make sure you're weighing it out to get it as accurate as possible. For most people, they will guesstimate how many, basically what they've put in and what they've put on there. What they've eaten. But what it's worth doing is thinking that you're basically going to build me a recipe. So I want to know exactly what has gone into your ham sandwich. I want to know how many grams of ham's in there, how many grams of butter's on the bread, if we've got any condiments on there. I want to know what bread we've used. I want to make an identical copy of what you've just had. So give me all of the details that I would need to be able to do that. The more detailed, the better. And that just means that you're going to have less, basically, margin of error, and you'll find it a lot easier. You can also do a little trick called reverse weighing, and I'm pretty sure I stole this term from Craig Jackson Fitness, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago, maybe about a month ago. But Craig used this term reverse weighing, and I was like, this is genius. I saw it on his Instagram. So basically, the idea is to weigh your so say you're having I don't know, like a condiment. Say you're having ketchup. You weigh the bottle first, you squeeze your ketchup onto your plate, and then you weigh the bottle after, and you basically substitute the difference. The technique I knew, but reverse weighing, I think, is the best way to think about it. So just doing that is really helpful when it comes to tracking. But basically, what should you track? The answer is everything. The next thing then a lot of people ask is, okay, well, how do I track meals that I'm not in control of? Whether you're not the one doing the cooking, whether you've eaten a meal out. And the answer is, well, the best that you can. We want to make sure that you're doing it as specifically as you can and getting into those nitty-gritty details. So if you're doing it where you're, let's say that you've gone to a friend's house for dinner, or that your partner's cooked the meal, ask them. Ask what they have put in the food. You can't go far wrong asking someone what they did. And most people are very willing to do it. When I lived at home with my parents and I was tracking calories, when my mum made dinner, I would go downstairs when she was cooking and scan the barcodes of things. So I had the data in there. So it's very, very doable. You've just got to kind of just do that little bit of extra work. And I'd ask and put my best estimate in. When you're tracking, the best thing to do is always to overestimate rather than underestimate, because you'd rather overestimate and eat fewer calories and just have a bigger deficit if you've gone wrong, rather than underestimate, think that you're in a calorie deficit, and then you're not actually in a calorie deficit. And that's really what you need to, because you've basically gone over any calories. So that's all that kind of it comes down to when it is fat loss is a calorie deficit. So you need to make sure that you're getting as close as possible. So it's always better to overestimate than underestimate. So when you go for meals out, what should you do? Now, I've spoken about how to navigate meals out before, very similar technique. But when it comes to the tracking of calories, some people recommend just doing a blanket, stick 1,000 calories in there, and then go for something that's a source of protein, a source of fiber, and then a source of a source of protein, your fiber, which is your fruit, veg, and salad, and then your carbohydrates. So choose one source of carbohydrates as well. If you can do that, you will be in a good position, with your calories. There's obviously going to be a margin of error. You're never going to know specifically, but it will give you a good plan. If the calories are on the menu, just do put down what the calories are on the menu. But again, there's always going to be a margin of error. The best way to explain this is if you and I both went to Wetherspoons and you had the cheese and tomato panini and chips, and I had the cheese and tomato panini and chips, but you got 20 chips on your plate and I got 15. We both track it the same, but you've eaten more than what I have. So it's important to remember that there will be variability, and that has to be taken into account when you're going for meals out. And the less that you are weighing, the less that you're putting down, the lower that accuracy is. So as much as possible, eat at home. But, life's for living, and there are going to be times where you end up having meals out. So make sure that you're popping down, like, are you getting as like decent as possible meals when you are out, and pop that down at 1,000 calories and kind of hope for the best, unless you suspect that it will be higher. The other thing that you can do is also track for a similar restaurant. So say, for example, you go to a cafe and you have that cheese and tomato, panini and chips, just track Wetherspoons is cheese and tomato, panini and chips. Like, that is an easy kind of like thing to swap across. And if you know it's going to be around a similar size, great, that works. Is it going to be 100% accurate? No, but at least you've got something in and you'll have a good idea. And again, overestimate rather than underestimate. So I would also always recommend, when it comes to tracking, and this is tracking in general, not just for meals out, but tracking in general, to pre-track, not post-track. So if you can pre-track the night before or on the morning of for what you're planning to do for the day, that will give you a good idea of what wiggle room you've got throughout the day. So say I pre-track my meals in, and I can see, say I'm in with 1,600 calories, and I can see that I've eaten 1,500 calories. I know that I've only got 100 calories left for a snack. So it's not like I'm then eating a 300 calorie snack and wondering where I've gone when I had my dinner already planned out. And this is where pre-planning food ahead of time is really useful. So if you can pre-track ahead, it just gives you a good idea of what wiggle room you've got. And yeah, it then just means that you are being like you're proactive rather than reactive in that situation. The other thing to remember here is that, like, most people like incorrectly estimate what they've eaten when they're asked to recall. So in research, like food diaries, like where like participants have just been asked to recall what they've eaten, like the accuracy of them is so bad. So it's worth remembering that, like, if you're asked, like, trying to recall what you've eaten throughout that day, it's not going to be that good. Like, the accuracy is not going to be there. Plus, I can't remember to the gram what I had at breakfast time. Like, even if I'd have tracked it out, like I have a pretty good memory, and I would still be struggling to remember to the gram every single thing that I've eaten today at the end of the day. So if you can, pre-track and then adjust. If you can't do that, tracking in the moment is absolutely fine. And worst case scenario, push track, but push track as quickly as possible, and try not to leave it till the end of the day to like kind of catch up on everything. So pre-track where possible, track in the moment, and then adjust in the moment. Track in the moment fully, but that's time consuming in the moment, or post-track, but really try to do that as close to the time of eating as possible, so that you can remember how many grams that you've put in there. And the more accurate you are, the better you'll find calorie tracking as a tool, and the more useful you'll find it as a tool. And then, yeah, like when it comes to portion sizes, it's really going to depend on like the size of the meal that you're having. In general, carbohydrates wise, I'll just give you like a few useful numbers basically. So carbohydrates wise, 60 to 75 grams is usually a portion. So that's off like pasta and rice. That works quite well. When it comes to potatoes, now they are like pretty low calorie for carbohydrates. You can usually get more of those. I think about 300 grams of potatoes is about 275 calories. You don't quote me on that one. Yeah, I'm just getting used to like portion sizes and what feels good for you. And it also depends on like what portion size of it you go for. It depends on what size of meal it has. Say you're eating like 2,500 calories in a day, you don't need to eat like a meal at 500 calories. Like, your meal can be bigger than that, so you therefore might have a bigger portion of carbohydrates. So it's all just things to think about and go, okay, what do we need to like, what needs to be going in here, and what would make the most sense. So when it comes to protein, what I'd recommend is just always having at least a 20-gram serving of protein, as in 20 grams of protein per serving. So say you're having a chicken breast, you want a chicken breast that allowed for 20 grams of protein. And I would aim for that as a minimum at each meal. If you can get your clear source of protein to be higher than 20 grams, you're going to be quitting now when it comes to your protein for the day. You can also aim for 30 plants across the week, and that just allows for a diversity. Or you might want to be aiming for more than 30 grams of fiber per day. These are just all different ways that you can kind of hit, but like a few useful numbers for like portion sizes. And when it comes to like building your plate, like a really easy thing to do is you want a quarter of the plate to be a protein source, you want half of the plate to be fruit, veg, and salad, and then you want a quarter of the plate to be carbohydrate. So just going for that allows for you to get in like that wide spectrum of food, but it also allows for you to know portion sizes. So if you're ever in doubt, the build your plate method works really well. But yeah, like fruit and veg, like you can't really go wrong. Fruit, veg, salad, you can't really go wrong with. Make sure you're eating plenty of that, because the fiber content in those is really beneficial as well, as in the microvitamins that you are getting from them. So on to the next question. if you are hungry around your period, how do you navigate that? The person that asked me this question just said that they get absolutely ravenous around their period. So do I. I fully appreciate this as a question, because I often get like really stuck with this one, and I just get like starving every period. So it can really vary on when you start to feel the hunger coming in. I tend to find that for me, it can happen anywhere from about 10 days out. So anytime after ovulation, your hunger will tend to increase because your BMR starts to increase. So your basal metabolic rate, basically just how many calories you burn by existing, starts to increase. So as your BMR is going up, you basically find that you might be hungrier, because for some people they're burning like 100 to 200 calories extra per day. Makes sense why you're craving more food. And what's really interesting about this is that we can sometimes associate it with cravings, but what we can sometimes associate it with is but basically cravings can change from like region to region. So if you were, say, in India, you wouldn't necessarily be craving the same things as what someone in England would be craving. So it's really important to remember that, and that cravings can be specific to region. So it's not as if like we need something specifically. So it's not like you need chocolate. It's just that you're craving chocolate, and that craving can change. But that doesn't mean that the cravings are not experienced, and that doesn't mean that you're not feeling that very physical feeling of being after chocolate or sweets or something salty or whatever it is that you're craving. So what's really important to remember here is you can increase your calories during this period. I've worked with people, and for some of them, like dieting during this period just isn't a good idea. It usually ends up to like less productive behaviors. So what we can do is either increase your calories and like get rid of your calorie deficit, so you're at maintenance, or we just make your calorie deficit smaller. We go for a 200 to 300 calorie deficit rather than a 500 calorie deficit or more. So just worth thinking about, how can you like navigate this and what do you need to do? What's really important is that you navigate the situation in front of you. You don't preempt it and go, oh, I am guaranteed going to be hungry from this day, therefore I need to make this shift. For some people, I have taken that approach. If we've been like, right, do you know what, we're just going to preemptively do this. But that's not fair, because not every period is going to be identical, and the symptoms that you experience across a period are going to be different, or across from period to period are going to be different. So it's really worth thinking, how am I experiencing this in the moment, and do I need to make these changes? And it's worth doing for some people. Like you might just decide that you want to stop dieting that week before, or you might decide that actually we're going to take it on that like day-to-day basis. But what I'd recommend is taking it on that day-to-day basis for like probably 6 months, 12 months. But remember that your period can change over time. So I find that it's a really interesting one actually. When I first moved to Manchester, I had like a lot of issues with my period. It wasn't like issues in terms of like irregularity. It was mood swings. My mood swings were so bad. Like I would get to like 2 to 3 days pre-period, and I was dire to be around. But like I was just not in a good mood at all. Like I was really and I was finding like I was feeling like in quite a quite bad headspace like around my period. And I went to the doctors and I spoke to them about it, and he was like, you said you just moved here? And I was like, yeah, like 3-4 months ago. He was like, yeah, that'll be it. And like after Jules and I have then just moved into this house, I've had a similar experience where like I've experienced like really like big mood swings pre-period. Sometimes I get in the mood like, and I'm just really ready to pick a fight. So it's something to just recognize that like sometimes you can be like internally stressed, and sometimes your period can differ for a reason, and sometimes that can be like you can feel the consequences of that months later. So just be aware of that like your periods are going to change from time to time, but like you might feel the consequence of something that happened 6 months ago. Like you might still be seeing that in a period way. So just bear that in mind. Like when you're planning ahead, it's often just important to go, okay, well, I've got this as a plan, but I don't have to stick to it. I can make changes. I can change based on the circumstances that are in front of me. So but a few tips for if you are absolutely ravenous pre-period. First thing is protein and fiber. So do things that will help keep you fuller for longer. Eating plenty of protein and eating plenty of fiber. Some people find healthy fats as well really help, especially in the satiation side of things. Plenty of protein and fiber, and sometimes healthy fats on top of that can help as well. So you might find like nuts, dark chocolate, avocados, that kind of thing work. The only caveat to that is that they are more calories per gram. So just be aware of that. Like if you are like opting to eat them, that will reduce your calorie deficit. If you're in a calorie deficit, or potentially like just knock your calories down a lot faster than what you otherwise would have done. You can also increase your calories whilst you're dieting. That is always an option. So just bear that in mind. Another tip that I'd suggest at this point is just knowing the difference between hunger and a craving and how to deal with them. So if you are hungry, that is a physiological kind of experience. You might feel it in your stomach, you know, when you get like belly growls or like you get hunger pangs. You might find that you've got headache. You might feel lethargic. You might feel like these physical sensations that in like of hunger. A craving, and you could eat anything with hunger. A craving is usually for something a lot more specific. So you might want something like, you might be like, right, I want chocolate, or I want something salty, or I want something sweet. Like these are cravings and you're after something really specific. And often you are craving hyperpalatable foods, so foods that are high in sugar, salt, or fat. So it's really important to remember that your body is kind of like craving these for a reason, and it's usually that it wants energy. Now, if you are hungry, don't solve that with something like chocolate. That is not going to help. If you are hungry, we go to protein and fiber. Eat that first. If you are still getting the cravings, then you might want to add that in, but we want to make sure that we're dealing with the hunger, because if you try to fill up on chocolate, you're going to eat a heck of a lot more chocolate than what you otherwise would have done in terms of calories. And like, you're going to end up a lot higher on calories than what you would do if you otherwise had just had like protein and fiber. Bear all that in mind. Protein and fiber, protein and fiber, protein and fiber. If you take anything from this question, protein and fiber. And then with a craving, like you want something more specific. In these situations, what I often suggest is like giving it 15 to 30 minutes, because what happens is when you initially get the craving, you have a rise in dopamine, which is encouraging you to act. So that feeling is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and you're going to get it until you get to the peak of the dopamine cravings. Whatever kicked it off, until you are kind of like past that 30-minute mark, you are that 15-minute mark, you're going to be on your way up to the peak of the cravings. It's going to get worse and worse and worse for the 15 minutes. But once you've hit that peak, it will start to decrease. And when that decreases, that dopamine starts to drop, you will find it easier to say no. So when it comes to like this drive to emotionally eat, like basically what this is of this craving, giving it that 30 minutes just allows you to see that cycle up and through. That's the dopamine cycle where you've got the craving to act. So if you take the, once we've passed that 30 minutes, you can then make a more informed choice around it. If you can't get to 30 minutes and you're like, I absolutely just have to eat this, then have it with some protein and fiber. So that could be something like you're having your chocolate, but you're also going to have it with some low-fat Greek yogurt and some fruit. It could be that you have, a protein shake first, then you have some fruit, then you have some grapes, and then you have your chocolate, or whatever it is, like whatever you're doing, but just making sure you're getting some protein and fiber in there is really, really, really useful, because it's just going to make sure that you're not going to end up overeating. So just getting all over that and just making sure that you're managing it the best that you can. There's also the other thing just to mention here about the expectation effect. If you know that if you are thinking that I'm expecting to be hungry, you will be hungry. Like your body will just meet that expectation. If you're thinking I'm expecting for this period to be really tough, you will find that period tough. Like your body will meet that expectation. So just bear that in mind. The expectation effect is there. So just ask yourself, what can you do to basically just make sure that you're not expecting like negative things. You can say, I expect that I will be able to handle this period, or I may experience these symptoms, but here's how I am going to handle it, and I expect that I will be able to handle it just fine. So just these little things here, these little mindset tricks are really useful to know, because they'll really make sure that you're on top of things when it comes to your cravings, comes to your hunger levels, but it also just makes sure that you're not setting yourself up for failure. All right, on to the next question. I'm really unhappy in my body, and whilst lots of my friends are losing weight with injections, I know that that isn't for me. I want to be healthier and get fitter, but I struggle to find the time, motivation, and willpower. So let's break this down. We're going to talk about weight loss injections. We're going to talk about motivation, finding the time, and willpower, and I'm going to give you tips for all 4 of those parts. So first off, weight loss injections, absolutely, they are all the rise. And this is one thing I've been experiencing a lot recently is we're talking with the people that I'm working with, and they will say that like actually it's really tricky when you're having a lot of conversations with friends around weight loss injections, especially when the numbers that weight loss injections are leading to are quite high. So they're saying, okay, well, I've lost like 3 pounds this week. I've lost 4 pounds this week. And then we're talking about losing like a pound a week rate. And that can feel like they're getting there a lot faster. When it comes to weight loss, one thing to think about is 1, it's not a race, but 2, it's not necessarily about how fast you get it off. It's how long you keep it off for. Now, I want you to be able to keep this off for the rest of your life. Like I want you to not have to worry about like dieting and feel like you have the habits and behaviors of a long-term weight loss maintainer. Whereas when we're not changing any behaviors, you might lose weight quickly, but that does not guarantee that you're going to keep it off. So thinking about how we can do things is really, really important to make sure that your behaviors and your goals are so making sure that your behaviors are goal aligned and making sure that you know what you're doing to keep the weight off long term, because that's the most important thing. If this isn't just a quick, I want to get shredded for my holiday, bikini body ready nonsense, this is about making sustainable change. I do not advise that you take GLP-1s if you only have a stone or two to lose. I recommend that for if you are in a body that has been severely compromised, your health has been compromised by you being in a bigger body, then it's worth having those thoughts about will this help facilitate my fat loss? But there's no morality around this, and that I wanted to kind of just say that there's no better or worse when it comes to fat loss. If you want to keep it off, you need to adopt the behaviors of long-term weight loss maintainers. That's the main thing, because that's what's important. And understanding time, motivation, and willpower will be really helpful on that long-term weight loss journey. So let's talk about it. Motivation comes down to 4 factors. The first factor is how easy it is. So if you're currently finding something really, really easy, you're going to be more motivated to do it. You're probably motivated to do behaviors that you find easy. If I was to you, right, let's go, let's say let's go play a game of mini golf. If I said let's go play this game of mini golf, and you were like, yeah, cool, let's do it, because you know that you're a golf pro, you'll be very excited for that game of mini golf. If you don't even know how to hold the club the right way around, you might be like, mini golf? Which one's that? Is that the one with the pool cue? So just knowing how easy it is super important, and knowing how easy it feels is really good. So the more competent you are at something, the better it will be. So if you're struggling with motivation to work out, is it because you're not feeling very competent at it yet? So what the question is what do you feel competent about? Within that, how can you feel more competent? So right, okay, it might be just that you at the moment you're super confident, confident and competent with going to classes. You can go to the gym, but you don't really know what you're doing in there. So it might be that we need to start off with doing things that will improve your confidence in the gym. It might be that you start off by going to classes. It might be that you start off with the gym stuff, but you go on some really basic machines which you know how to use already. So asking yourself, does this feel easy? And if not, how can we make this easier is a really easy way to increase motivation. The next thing to say is how much do you enjoy it? When we like doing things, we will do them more. It's probably not hard to tell you to eat, to try convince you to eat chocolate. That is a very motivating thing to do. It's probably a lot harder to motivate you to eat an apple. It's one of those things where it's pretty obvious. Or if I was to say, let's run a marathon, for most people, they'd be like, absolutely bloody not. But if you were to say, let's go for a walk in the park, that is a lot more motivating. Especially if you can be like, right, let's go for a walk in the park and we'll have a coffee stop halfway through. Great. Most people would be super up for that. So yeah, do you enjoy it is a general question there. And the more that you can enjoy something, so if you're not enjoying something at the moment, ask yourself, how can I enjoy this more? How can I change this so that I enjoy it more? If you enjoy it more, well, you're more likely to stick to it. So the next thing for motivation is thinking about aligning it to your values. So if it is value aligned, you are way more likely to do it. So what often happens is we end up with conflicting values. We end up trying to yeah, health is important to me, but also spending time with my family, and doing the behaviors that are health promoting are currently conflicting with the behaviors that are family promoting. So it might be that you at the moment, what's really important to you is spending your time with your family, but the only time that you get to see everybody together is on a Saturday morning, and that's also the time that you plan to go to the gym. So now you're not excited about going to the gym because you want to spend time with your family, and you've got this pull. And that's really when our values we've got 2 competing values. So what we want to do is make sure that our goals are aligned to our values and that we can do it in a way that feels like it's productive. So say there when we've got competing values, what we might do is say, right, well, can we do some exercise on a Saturday morning with the family? That could be a walk around the park. Can we go on a family walk? Can we go on a family bike ride? Whatever it is, depends on how old everybody is and how much everyone is up for cycling on that one. But just having things that you can do together is really, really useful. And then finally, asking, does this align to your goals? So what we often end up doing is creating goals where we're not quite aligned with things. So you might be like, oh, I'm going to the gym, but I'm not quite sure how this is aligned to my goal of keeping, losing weight. Or you might be like, right, I want to run a marathon, but I'm not quite sure how going to the gym is aligned to my goal. So making sure that your behavior, and you know how it's aligned to the goal and how it's going to help you get to your, point. So say you want to lose weight, but you're not quite sure how drinking water is going to help you lose weight, then just make sure that you kind of have that connection in your head. So making sure you can see the tangible link and the steps that you need to take to get to that point where you are yes, I can see how drinking more water leads me to losing weight and keeping it off. So just making sure that you can see that straight line between that. So that was motivation. We want to make it is ask yourself, how easy is it? And can we make it easier? How much do you enjoy it? And can you enjoy it more? Does it align to your values? And how can we make sure that our values are not conflicting? And then does it align to your goals? And can you see a straight line from your goals to the action behavior? Because that will make it way more motivating. Do those 4 things and you'll just be like, you'll never really struggle with motivation again. So let's talk about finding the time. When it comes to building habits, we want to make sure that we're doing things that we can easily slot into our life and integrate in, not crowbarring. When we try to stick something on top, we always end up like losing out when other things get busy. So yeah. So what you need to ask yourself to do is how can we build that, like how can we build habits and start small with them? So it might be that you just do an extra 10 to 15 minutes of walking to get an extra like 1,000 to 1.5k steps in. It might be that you start drinking an extra 500 ml of water. It might be that you start going to bed 30 minutes earlier. Whatever it is, just having those small behaviors in there where you can start to think about, just basically building better, like building habits in there, like at smaller increments rather than going for big swings. So keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate your habits and start small, like 1 to 3 things, maybe. Like you don't need to do a lot of things. If you want to know the easiest place to start and have like personalized recommendations, I'd highly recommend taking the Healthy Habits quiz. I'm going to pop the link in the show notes and in the description box below. If you like go in there, just click on that. It literally takes 90 seconds and you'll get personalized recommendations on the best places to start your health habits. It's probably the easiest place to do, especially if you want to start small. It'll tell you like the small steps to take, like the next increment to take. So that's how you kind of like find the time, is just start small. It's a lot easier to fit 15 minutes into your day than it is to fit a whole 45-minute workout. 15 minutes of extra walking, super doable. 10 minutes extra walking, even 2 minutes. You don't have to go massive. Like literally just start with the smallest thing that you can manage and go, what can I actually do? Bonus points if you stack it onto another behavior or another habit. So for example, you might stack it onto breakfast, lunch or dinner, or you might you might stack it onto when you finish work. So it might be like, when I close my laptop for the end of the day, I am going to do X. And it's stacking that behavior with the other behaviors. Finally, let's talk about willpower. So willpower, I think, is one of these concepts where we create like an illusion that it's a thing, and I think we have like it kind of like we've given it way more credit than it deserves. Yes, there is an amount of like kind of basically the thing with willpower is that the people who use willpower a lot will find that they're constantly kind of like at their limit with it. Like if you're constantly in an environment that's triggering you and having to make you make decisions around something. So say for example, I'm in the house and there is some donuts on the say there's some donuts on the cabinet behind me. Say there's some like some chocolate biscuits on the table. I walk into the kitchen and there's like a chocolate bar lying out on the side. Guaranteed that by the time I've walked past those 3 things, 4, 5, 6, 7 times within a day, I will have had at least one of them at least some point. So the more like triggered you are, like the more you're going to have to use your quote unquote willpower, the more that you're going to find that you're like having to make those decisions. So the first thing to just say really when it comes to willpower is design your environment so you're not having to use it. Like make it so easy for yourself. Like stop making it trickier. So find less food around the house and make sure things are put away into cupboards. Make sure that you have like a strategic plan around like anything in your environment that's going to cause you problems basically. So if you're finding that you're struggling to get your steps in, make sure that you put your shoes in a really obvious place, or make sure that you have things out in a really obvious place if you want to remember them. So we have our like vitamins. We have Jules and I both take iron tablets, and we leave those out in the middle of the dining room table so that we always see them at meal times. We always have them with a meal, so it's really easy to remember then. So we usually have them at breakfast time because it's there in front of us. But if we didn't see it, like that is just designing your environment, and you can do things like adding things in or taking things out. So if you want to remember it, you want to make sure you're having more of it, stick it out. Fruit, great example. If fruit's in the fridge, you're forgetting that it's there. If fruit's on the side, you're remembering it's there. Or fruit's in a fruit bowl in front of you, in front of the TV, chef's kiss. You're seeing it. You're seeing that as your snack first. So if it's there, you'll see it. It's a visual cue. It's a visual prompt. If you want it to be a visual prompt, that's great. If you don't, then it needs to be away. It needs to be in the cupboards. It needs to be out of sight, out of mind. So yeah, get things, design your environment. The next thing that kind of like will impact willpower is how you've eaten throughout the day. Now, a lot of people end up energy compensating. And the way that like I think of this is basically you have like an upside down triangle. You have a tiny breakfast, then you have a small lunch, and then you start to have a bigger evening meal. But by the evening time, you've still not eaten a bulk of your calories. You're bloody starving, and your body's like, oh, I just want food. And you end up like finding that you're overeating on the evening. It's because you've not eaten enough throughout the day. So what you want to do is you want to have your meals looking as even as possible. Instead of an upside down triangle, we want it to be a rectangle. So everything is very uniform throughout the day. Make sure that you're eating plenty of protein and fiber throughout the day as well, because that will help keep you fuller. If you're waiting until the end of the day, you're going to again be starving, and your body's going to be getting to the evening like, oh, we need food, we need food, we need food. So just making sure that like you're giving it like what it needs throughout the day, making sure we're fueling as evenly as possible. Finally, on the like willpower front, make decisions ahead of time and make your decisions be easy. When we're tired and we have decision fatigue, we've been making decisions all day, you're like knackered from the day, you're ready for bed, like making a decision to eat a healthy meal or not is a lot harder. So make food as easy and as simple as possible by just making those decisions ahead of time. So pre-plan your meals out on a Sunday for the rest of the week. Just make sure that you have some good clarity over what you're eating so that like you're not having to make those decisions in the moment. Even if it's just like, right, okay, I know that I'm going to be having the chicken as my protein source this day, and then just coming up with the rest of it around it. And always just having that in there as like your like ahead of time plan, because it just means you're not making decisions in the moment and when you're like most tired and possibly hungry, and you're not going to be making the best quality decision there. Another thing that I do as well is like literally, this is going to sound so silly, but I don't make that many decisions around my life throughout the day. So the biggest decision I make is like what t-shirt I'm going to wear, because I know I'm going to be wearing a pair of jeans with it. So typically I'm wearing a pair of black jeans or blue jeans, and I just have to make sure I have a corresponding t-shirt. At one point, I think I owned like 7 or 8 white t-shirts. So like most days you just catch me in a white t-shirt and like black or blue jeans. Like I do not make that many decisions around clothing, and it's really helpful because it means that I'm not having to like start my day off by making like 10 different decisions. I know I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. There's literally no other question about it. I think I've worn jeans and a t-shirt probably every single day for like the last 10 years maybe. So yeah, like just keep it, like make sure you're minimizing decisions where possible, because you don't want to end up with decision fatigue towards the end of the day, and then you're trying to plan out a meal and you've basically just made all of the decisions that you're ever going to need to make in a day, and you're tired, you're low blood sugar, and you're not in the mood. So on to the final question. So the question is, I'm struggling with food noise at night. I've set myself up for a bit of failure by binging junk food and by binging junk food brackets chocolate and crisps in bed most nights, so approximately 3 nights a week after work, because I'm tired and stressed. Now I associate bed with snacking. Please help. So what's really important here, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you strategies for what to do in the moment, but I'm also going to give you a strategy to like address the root cause as well, because it's really important that we have something to use in the moment, but we also address the problem. I heard an analogy once, and it was like, imagine you're walking through the woods as you and a friend, and you see a kid in the stream, and the kid's like drowning in the stream. So you jump in, get them out, and then you're like, then the kid's fine. Then you see another kid coming in the stream, and then you're like, what's going on? And you say like, take them out, and then you jump in, and like, there's another kid, and there's another kid, and there's another kid, and you're constantly in and out of the stream trying to get the kids out of the stream. And then you think to ask, what's happening? And you go, oh, actually, if we go further upstream, we find that there's someone throwing a bunch of kids in the water, telling them to dive in. Oh, well, actually, if we stop the kids jumping in the first place, then we're not going to have to save all the kids at the lower end of the street. So that's why it's really important that we can have strategies if we're in the moment where we're taking the kids out of the stream, but what we also want is to just stop the kids from jumping in the first place. So yeah, I thought that was a really useful analogy for kind of like knowing why we want to do root cause and in the moment stuff. So the other thing to mention here is that you don't want to be creating habit holes. So when we try take a habit away, so say we said, right, we're going to stop eating on a night time in bed. If we say, right, we're not eating on a night time anymore. If we just take that habit away and we now don't replace it with anything, you're going to create a habit hole. And that's going to mean that when you're feeling stressed, tired, and you've got this perfect hole in which like eating in bed fits perfectly, but you're saying, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that. You're just going to feel really stressed, really overwhelmed. And eventually you're going to end up like pinging back basically, and ending up just still back in that cycle and wondering, why can't I ever stick to it? So asking yourself, like, how can we like get a like new behavior into here is a lot about replacing the behavior as much as it is about taking the other behavior away. So asking yourself that is super important. It's also important to recognize here that you've tied a behavior to a location. So your bed, as you've like so correctly identified here, is like you now I associate my bed with snacking. So like this is really important again, and this is to do with environments. So asking yourself, can we have one use for one environment? So your bed is for sleeping. I once heard someone refer like to bed as like the only two things that should happen in bed is sleeping and sex. And like that is it. And I was like, that's a really good way to think about it, because then that means that you're not on your phone, you're not on your well, depends on what depends on a few things, but yeah, you're then not on your phone, you're then not snacking in bed, you're then not watching TV in bed. Like just seeing your bed as like a place that basically you just sleep is the best place to is the best thing to do. So if you can embrace that, that mindset is really useful. However, if you are already in the habit of like doing something, we want to make sure that we've got we're not creating a habit hole there. So there's also one more thing I want to highlight and preface before I answer this question. If you've never heard me mention the concept of neuroplasticity before, this is super important. So neuroplasticity is the idea that your brain can still change and adapt over time. We used to think that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Oh, that is not true. You can teach an old dog new tricks. So you can still build new behaviors and new habits even as you age. It doesn't matter even if you've had a behavior in place. One thing I always say to people when I start working with them is, give yourself more than like just a little bit of time. Like give yourself more than 5 minutes, give yourself more than 12 weeks to change behaviors that you've had for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years. You need time. You need to give yourself time and grace and energy, because this isn't something you're going to change because you've walked down this path so many times. So when we have this concept of neuroplasticity, the first time you walk down this path is going to be quite hard, because we're creating a new connection. We're basically creating a new connection between one neuron in your brain and another neuron in your brain. And we're saying, right, you guys need to have a chat. We've not got the infrastructure there yet. So I like to imagine it like a jungle. So the first time that you do this habit, it's going to feel pretty alien. It's like you're walking through the jungle and you're chopping away with your machete, and like you're not really creating much clearing. But the next time you've already done some whatever the word is, you've already done some chopping down, you've already done some gardening, so you've already made that route a little bit clearer. So when we chop away some more trees, it gets a little bit clearer. And then the next time we go, we're going to chop it down again. So the next night when we're not eating in bed, we're going to chop it down again, because we're adding a new habit in there. So whatever habit we replace it with, this is what you create the neuroplasticity for, the new connection. So we're chopping down. The next time it's going to be clearer. The next time it's going to be even clearer. And the more times you walk down this path, the clearer it's going to get, the more trampled the footwear is going to be. And then eventually you might be like, right, let's put pavement down. And then street lights come up. And that's when the habit becomes super established. So just remember that like the first few times that you do this is going to be hard, because there's going to be everything everywhere. You've never been down this path before. But the more times you go down it, the more practice that you have, the easier it will be long term. So just remember that it's going to suck at first, but you're going to get better at it. So the first thing that we're going to do is set a really clear boundary with your space. So you have one use for one space. So for example, even when I work from the dining room table, I work from a different seat to what I eat in. So when I eat, and especially when Jules and I eat, we eat in a different place to when I work at the dining room table. So eventually, occasionally, I'll just like get out of my office and like I can't work in there anymore. So just making sure that there is like one use for one space is really, really important. So like we said, your bed is for sleeping and any other fun stuff that you want to do in there. But we want to then also make sure that you're eating without distraction. If you're finding that you're like sitting and watching TV, or you're like eating like with distraction, like you're sitting and scrolling through TikTok or whatever, you're not fully present with your food. So if you can do that, that's going to be really helpful to just not eat without distraction, because it's going to help you just stay more in the moment and recognize that you're eating, especially if you're having foods like chocolate and crisps, because you're basically, these are foods that are easy to overeat on, and then you're distracting your brain. So your brain's not even concentrating on the fact that it's overeating. So like it is, again, even easier for you to eat more food. So we want to just make sure that we're eating without distractions. In the moment, the other thing that you can do is, if you are eating, I would say make sure that you do it in a space. When you do that, make sure you just take it to somewhere that you can eat. So you have your space for eating, whether that be your dining room table, whether that be, I don't know, somewhere else. But like, just make sure that you have a space for eating. And when you eat in that space. And that's kind of like the only place that you eat in the house. And just we're training your brain to do that. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is well, you said to me, so in the question, you said that you're finding that you're stressed and you're tired. So let's address those two things. We want to address that root cause. Remember, we're thinking upstream as well about stopping throwing the kids in the water. So, God, we've had jungles, we've had water, we've had throwing the kids in, drowning kids. This has been quite the episode. If you look at the stress, let's ask where that stress is coming from. Well, you've said it's coming after work, so I'm assuming it's coming from work. So let's ask what's causing the stress there. Is it that that you've not got better boundaries? Is it you've not got good boundaries, sorry, at work? Is it that your boss is stressing you out? Is it that your commute is not feeling right? Is that causing you some stress? What is the situation that's causing you that high level of stress, and how can we reduce it? So thinking about like setting better boundaries, thinking about like, can you hand projects off? If it's a short-term thing, is there an end date to it? Is it just a case of just pushing through? For sometimes, like I find when I work with people, they'll have projects at work that last for like 2, 3, 4 weeks. And they're like, right, I just need to muster through these 3, 4 weeks, and then it'll be done, and then things will get a lot easier. That's fine. Like sometimes it is just a case of doing that. But if we're finding that like the stress and the tiredness, the stress is coming up, what can we do to make sure that like you're reducing that stress overall? And that can just sometimes be as simple as things like breathing as well. So asking yourself, what can we do instead when we get stressed? Going, okay, well, do we need to do some breathing habits? Do we need to go for a walk? Do we need to journal? Do we need to like call a friend? Like, what is it that you need to do to help you reduce that stress? So think about what you can do in the moment, but also think about those longer term stuff of how can we get rid of that. And then the next thing is the tiredness. So where's the tiredness coming from? Is it coming from lack of sleep? Is it coming from like a poor bedtime routine? Is it coming from like poor quality of sleep? Like, what is the issue there with this with the tiredness? Is it that you're just like mentally fatigued but not physically fatigued? Is it that you're not seeing any daylight throughout the day? So asking yourself where the tiredness is coming from, and then just addressing that issue there as well. Can we get better sleep habits? Can we get a better bedtime routine? Can we get better quality of sleep? Can we make sure that like you like are getting to bed slightly earlier? So just making sure that you've got all of these practices in place, and then just addressing the root cause of the tiredness and the stress in this situation. And then just asking yourself, do I need to add another behavior in to address these things? Because that's often the case. So as I said here, we've removed that behavior. So we've said, right, one use, one space. And it's not going to feel fun at first when you go down this route and you say, right, I'm not gonna eat in bed anymore. You're going to do that. What we're going to do is replace it with other stress reducing behaviors and other tiredness reducing behaviors. So we said, right, whenever I feel stressed, when I've come home from work, I'm feeling stressed. The first thing that I'm going to do is just do a couple of breathing exercises. So I'm going to practice breathing in through my nose and then doing a longer exhale out of my mouth. So it might be in for 2, out for 4. So let's say that's thing number 1 that we've done. The next thing that we're going to do is if I'm still feeling stressed after that, I don't feel like I'm kind of like come down into this more relaxed state, I'm just going to call my mum. I'm going to have a nice chat with her, or I'm going to call a friend and I'm going to have a nice chat with them. Or it might be that you're like, right, I'm going to go out for a walk, 15 minutes, no headphones in, nothing to stress me out, just nice and chill. Or it might be that you're thinking, right, I'm actually just going to cook with some peaceful music on, and that's the next thing that I'm going to do. So whatever it is that you're going to do to de-stress, make sure that we replace that behavior. You'll find that it gets a lot easier when we've replaced. Again, we're not leaving that habit hole there. So what do we need to do to de-stress? What do we need to do to de-tired you, wake you up? But yeah, what is it that's there? So just replacing that behavior. Remember, it's consistency, not perfection. You don't have to be perfect with this replacement habit. You just need to do it consistently. And if you aren't perfect and you do end up having a night where you end up eating in bed, like just recognize the behavior, take a conscious note of it and go, look, this wasn't what I was intending to do. Here's how I ended up in this situation. Here's how we're going to do it differently next time. No judgment, no blaming yourself. Like reprimanding yourself never works. Positive reinforcement always works more successfully than what negative reinforcement does. So just asking yourself, what's going on here? Why am I doing this? And don't then go press the fuck it button and just go, oh, well, I've already screwed it all up. I might as well spend every night in bed this week eating my chocolate because, well, yeah. Or, well, I've already eaten half the bag. I might as well eat the full thing. That's not getting you any further and that's not helping. So just asking yourself, what can you do? Catch yourself in the moment, stop it and move on. And if you're, again, really struggling with this, just check out the Emotional Eating Toolbox. I'll pop a link for that in the show notes as well. It'll just be really useful for you to kind of like go through that and like work into the behavior specifically for emotional eating. But hopefully that has made a difference. In the Emotional Eating Toolbox as well, I also talk about other strategies to help you like regulate emotions. So yeah, definitely check that out. But yeah, otherwise, if you have any questions that you would like for me to answer on a future Q&A episodes, I love the Q&A episodes, by the way, so please hit me up. As you can tell, I've been talking for like 43 minutes at this point. So yeah, hit me up with all your Q&A questions, and I will absolutely include them in future episodes. But otherwise, have an absolutely fantastic rest of the day, and I will catch you in the next one.